Hello, and welcome to another walkthrough from Wonks. Today, we are going to talk about the cookie consent regulations for website. What are the different type of cookies on the website? What is a cookie consent banner? And how can your business comply with these regulations? So what exactly is a cookie consent regulation? So beginning January 2024, Google announced that implementing Google Consent Mode is going to be mandatory by March 2024 if you want to continue to track the ad personalization features on your website. So these features are used to track the conversions in Google Ads, the audience list in your GA4 account, and a range of user data across the Google platforms. So these consent have different regulations across different countries. So for example, you must have heard from the GDPR in European Union, but however, GA4 and Google Ads are actually global platforms. So even if you are not in one of those countries where the regulations are really strict, you still have to provide the consent to the end user so that the data can be tracked in the Google platforms. So let me go back to what exactly are the different type of cookies which we need the consent for. So the first of all, there will be essential cookies. So these cookies are required to track the very necessary features on your website. For example, the security, the authentication of the user, so that if the user is logged in, they don't have to authenticate on every single page. So these are very basic essential cookies. Second are the functional cookies. So these cookies are created to improve the user experience. So for example, if you go to a website and select a language, you don't have to make sure that you select the language on every single page. It remembers your selection. Or even like the username and passwords to make it easy for them to log in back again. So the third type is actually the marketing and analytic cookies. So these cookies are used to track online activity for marketing, advertising, and analytic purposes. So so these consent, what exactly it is asking for is you need to have an explicit consent from the end user to select one or all cookies or reject all of them when they come to the website. And based on this selection, your Google tag management system needs to fire or deny any particular tag to send data to Google Analytics, Google Ads, or any other Google platform. So why or how exactly it is done? It is basically done by a cookie consent banner. So a cookie consent banner is a different form of banner than your normal, where you must have seen a lot of websites you go to is a pop-up comes up and basically tells you that, yeah, we track cookies for navigational and marketing purposes, but they do not ask you for consent. But the cookie consent banner needs to ask for the consent. So for example, a banner will show up and it will show you the essential, the functional, and the marketing cookies option as a checkbox. And depending on the user, what they select, the tag management system will fire or deny those tags to implement. So until and unless the end user has given their consent or explicit consent to track their data as user behavior, you need to set the default as not allowed. So that will stop tracking for that particular user. So this is quite strict in some of the countries, but most of the countries as of March 2024, there are no mandatory regulations around it. So how can your businesses comply with this consent regulation? So first of all, we need to make sure that depending on which country your business is set up, you need to look at the regulation and laws for that particular country. So for example, if you're in European Union, you have something called GDPR, and then you have Digital Marketers Act. If you're in United Kingdom, you have UK GDPR. If you're in California state in USA, you have CCPA. If you're in Brazil, you have LGPD. And if you're in South Africa, you have POPIA regulations. So based on whichever country you're in, you have to make sure your cookie consent banner follows what exactly that law requires, and make sure you only track the data for the users where you have explicit consent from them, where they have granted that access to be tracked. So if your business who is not in one of those mentioned countries, as of March 2024, when this video is recorded, so you have to make sure, because Google Analytics and Google Ads is a global platform, So they still need from your end that the cookie consent was provided. So we need to say that, yeah, we have been granted access or granted consent from the end user to be able to track that data. So for example, if you're a New Zealand business, you still need to bypass that information to Google Analytics for every user that is tracked on your website so that it can continue to track that data for you. So sometimes we hear is like businesses will say, I do not have any analytics tracking on the website. Why do I need to have the cookie consent setup done? So this is because Google has various third-party applications that actually run on your website. So for example, if you're using Google Fonts, if you have a video embedded on the website from YouTube, if you have Google Maps embedded on the website, or even something like reCAPTCHA that you're using on the forms to stop any spam coming from your website. All of these platforms are actually third-party platforms and require third-party cookies. So you explicitly need consent settings for these users as well to be able to make sure that third-party apps like reCAPTCHA and Google Forms actually work for you on the website. So, and you may have a question about how can I implement this cookie banner? So sometimes if it is a very known website content management system, like WordPress, like Shopify, like Magento, I'm sure they have some inbuilt plugins that you can use to set up a cookie consent banner. And depending on if a user selects accept all or reject all, your tag manager can update whether to track that user or not. But if you have a very custom website, you should be looking at a third-party cookie management platform. There are a lot of them out there. They have a subscription fee, and they track the users in a way depending on the consent that has been granted. So however it works for you, we can also look at some options for you depending on your setup. And for the Google Tag Management side of things, your tag manager or your G tag on the website needs to make sure it follows or it only accepts data from the user where the consent has been granted. Yeah, so that's what exactly it is about the consent regulations as of March 2024. As a disclaimer to this video, we strongly suggest you check the current laws for the consent regulations. And this video is not providing any legal advice, and the views shared here should only be for the learning purposes. So whichever country you are in, it needs to be followed the rules and laws for that particular country. Okay, so I hope you find this video helpful, and please let us know if you have any questions. Cheers. Bye.